All right, welcome. This video is documenting this prediction that the US stock market will crash on April 13th, Monday, and or May 1st. Could be that the market crashes on both dates. If it is only, well, it could be either one or on both dates. God is pointing to both dates in regards to this. So in my opinion, based on experience, which is over 8 years of studying his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, the chances that May 1st is not a date for the market crash is small because it's the latter of these two dates. And if anything, chances are, if anything, if only one of the dates is being pointed to, April 13th would be a step, because this is how it works. There are steps in the trail of signs, and so it's possible that April 13th is a step in the trail of signs to May 1st. But I think that it'll probably be both dates. Either way, let's just stick with the straightforward prediction here. It is predicted that the market will crash on either one of these dates or both of these dates. That's it, okay? Another prediction is that it will be the beginning of the biggest crash in the stock market in all of history. That's another prediction. That obviously will not be known to have come true or not for a while after now. I don't know how long it will take for the market to have its biggest crash in all of history. Could take a year, could take 2 years, it could take 2 months, it could take 2 weeks. All right? I do not think it'll take 2 days, but it could take 2 weeks, but I don't think so. I think it could take 2 months. That's possible. Now, because we are in the biggest bubble of all of history and it has nothing to do with Iran. All right? That said, it's also predicted that, let's stick with this for now. We're just going to stick on this one subject. I'm not going to talk about the prediction for Iran right now, unless it comes up, which I'm sure it will in this video, during the course of this video. All right, so it's also predicted that on either one of these dates, it'll be what you might call a black swan event. An unexpected, shocking event that arguably could have been known ahead of time, but wasn't. That's the definition of a black swan event. The classic example of a black swan event in the financial markets is Black Monday in 1987, when the markets when the Dow lost a record 23% in one day. And that record still holds today. I think that record may be eclipsed during this next crash. We'll see. But I do think also that at some point the Dow will lose 13% in one day. And that day might be April 13th or May 1st. Okay. Now, so this video, as you see, this email, as you can see here, well, first of all, the post date of this video proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time. All right. I do not have an inside contact at YouTube that can change and alter the dates for me, let alone contacts at every video platform, including the other ones that this video was on. But also, this email, as you can see, was composed on April 8th. Okay, April 8th. Now, the hardcore fundamentalist, religionist, agnostic atheist, because agnostic atheism is a dogmatic religion, and its adherents are religionists. Okay? The hardcore agnostic atheist, which is the vast majority of people in the West today, completely irrational people, but nonetheless, that's where we're at in Western culture. a completely irrational place, and for most people anyway. And so for that person that will conclude that I got lucky here when the market crashes on April 13th and or May 1st, what I have to tell you is that the reasons in this video that I'll explain prove otherwise. As you will see, these reasons could not have been concocted in the imagination of a human being. No one is that creative. If you think so after hearing these reasons, you are a fool. A complete, utter fool. And that's the case with agnostic atheists. They are foolish people in general. With how they think, that is. I'm just referring to, I'm not talking about who they are as a person and their integrity and things like that. I'm talking about how they think about the meaning of life and reality. All right? Which it's all interrelated though, and it's all spiritual. The truth is, they refuse to accept any evidence for God, even though there's... So the core belief of the agnostic religion is there may or may not be a God, but it's impossible to know because there is no evidence for God. That's a belief. That's the core belief of that religion. And every worldview is a religion. This is the core belief of this worldview religion. Okay? And what that does is it gives them permission, so they think, which is why they love it, to not think about it. Because in their mind, it's not worthy of thinking about, because it's impossible to know. Why? Because there's no evidence. But it's the biggest lie. I mean, there's even an overwhelming amount of scientific evidence. I mean, their scientism, their worship of science, actually their scientism is based on a worldview that dates back to the late 18th century. The late 1700s is where they are at in their mindset, believe it or not, with materialism in early 1800s, right? I mean, early 20th century science proves that there's an intelligent designer behind the universe, but of course you never hear this evidence because of the propaganda in the culture and it being illegal because of these Nazis these leftist progressive Nazis that control any sort of scientific evidence for a God to be taught in schools. Okay, you get my point. Times are way darker than the agnostic atheist thinks because, well, they're in control and they love the way things are. But the way things are completely corrupt, and they are corrupt for supporting this system, for example, that it's illegal to teach the truth about science regarding an intelligent designer behind the universe. Okay, that's how bad it is. It's really bad. Wake up, you foolish agnostic atheists. Now, so the information, the reasons for knowing these predictions ahead of time prove the matter. They'll be clear, as you will see. They're clear and profound and clearly indicate a righteous Christian God of the Bible. Not an impersonal energy God that is the universe itself. Not the Hindu religion that has replaced Christianity in the West. No, a personal being, not an impersonal energy, a personal being, beginner to the creation. It'll prove this. And that's the purpose of this prediction that is from God, is to prove this. And also to prove the controversial things that I'll be saying in this video and the other videos on this channel. And I know far more than you or anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. Okay, so let's get into these reasons. Let me start explaining these reasons for how this prediction is known. God is telling a particular story here, and it's through these stories that God tells that he is able to communicate extremely important information and knowledge. Besides proof of the existence of the righteous Christian God of the Bible. Okay? And so, let's begin. Also, this just came to me today, but there's something to do with Pink Floyd and George Floyd regarding Artemis 2 launch. All right. I'm not going to get into the connection with George Floyd. That was something that my friend wrote in an email exchange, and this information here in this email is just a copy paste of the communication and notes that I made as the insights came regarding what is going on here. But we're talking about Pink Floyd here because David Gilmour, the musician in Pink Floyd, his guitar, the Stratocaster guitar, sold at an auction for $14.55 million on March 12th. He used this guitar on the Pink Floyd album, The Dark Side of the Moon. It is said the astronauts on Artemis 2 will see the dark side of the moon. Actually, they were the first, and God uses firsts for signs. They were the first astronauts to see the dark side of the moon with their own eyes. I didn't know that, actually, until now. I assumed that the astronauts on the Apollo mission had a window through which they could see the dark side of the moon. Not true. And so anyway, and also they launched on the day of the pink moon. The full moon that's known as the pink moon is the day that they launched. Another connection to Pink Floyd. And I'm just scratching the surface right there. All right. Which I'll get into in another amazing video, which ties it all to, believe it or not, the Beatles' song, A Day in the Life. Because on the day that they launched, Paul McCartney performed at the 50th anniversary of Apple Inc. I'm just not going to go any further than that, though. Now, April 1st, the day of the launch, was a full moon, and the full moon in April is called the Pink Moon. Pink Floyd, okay? April 1st, 2026 was, here we go. The 322nd prime number after George Floyd died. God has been using this pattern of 322 to hint at Genesis 3:22, which is symbolic of the quest for immortal life without God. Long story short, we're just going to leave it right there. Now, very interesting. Nice recall on the Pink Floyd guitar and Pink Moon. I'm not sure what to make of the follow the white rabbit signs, but on April 5th, Trump should be with a white rabbit. And this will be 33 days after the white rabbit lunar eclipse on the date 3/3. Why is it the white rabbit lunar eclipse? Because there's an asteroid named White Rabbit that conjoined with the eclipses, the lunar one on the date 3/3 and the solar one on February 17th, these two recent eclipses. And there's this pattern of signs involving follow the white rabbit, which I explained in another video. But also another pattern we have here, and this, by the way, is how God's signs and prophecy works. It's through pattern. The Gentiles, the Greeks, as you would say, think of prophecy in terms of prediction, fulfillment. Whereas the Jews interpret prophecy as more pattern. And that's how it is. The Bible is also a pattern. One can take an infinite number of pathways through it, and you have these repeating patterns and themes. It's all interconnected. It's not a linear document. Well, it's the same with God's signs. They're not linear, they're patterned. And we have a pattern here of the white rabbit, black swan signs, Pink Floyd, Pink Moon now. We also had the purple banana signs. Purple banana is from Prince's song. And I'm not going to explain anything more than that because it's not relevant to this video. But we have this pattern of this color adjective preceding a particular noun, which is meaningful. Banana hints at Obama, by the way. We had the White Rabbit eclipses in conjunction with the Bad Bunny halftime show at the Super Bowl, just to give you a little taste of where that came from. And that's just a small little sample because it goes much more than that. But we've had these black swan signs too. And this sale of the black, because the nickname of the guitar, the Pink Floyd guitar, is Black Strat. That's the name of the guitar, and God uses records for signs. This was a record sale for a guitar. The most ever paid for a guitar, and the name of this guitar is Black Strat, which is a part of this pattern of black swan signs that are pointing to a financial collapse, a black swan event in the stock market, and this Black Strat sign involves money. And the guitar was used on the Dark Side of the Moon album, which contains Pink Floyd's big hit called Money. Okay, so White Rabbit, Black Swan, Pink Floyd, Pink Moon. You get the pattern here. Colors and these. It's interesting. Very interesting what God does. Now, is there a reason why March 12th? Okay, so on the day of the sale of the Black Strat, there was the plane crash that resulted in 6 military personnel deaths, which brought the total to 13. And it's remained at 13 since then. Why? Because it's a massive sign. God is really emphasizing 13 here. There hasn't been a single death since March 12th, which is unusual given the scope and size of the operation. I mean, accidents happen in the military. And anyway, there hasn't been another death since then. 13 total still. The reason why is because 13 symbolizes America and Iran. America was founded on 13 colonies, which actually, believe it or not, I know it'll raise some eyebrows, but they symbolize the 13 tribes of Israel. In other words, America is the 13th tribe of Israel, symbolically. It is an Israel. America is an Israel. It is a chosen nation of God's. There have only been 2 nations in the history of the world that have been founded on a relationship with God and the Bible, Israel and America. And the 12th tribe of Joseph was divided to his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And although Manasseh was the younger of the siblings, he was allotted the inheritance. Well, long story short, Ephraim and Manasseh symbolize the UK and its younger sibling, America, which was given the inheritance. Okay, and Iran, because in the Bible, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist, and Haman, a type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews in Persia, Iran, on the 2 13th days of the month. Also, the name Iran is equal to 130 in Hebrew gematria. Okay, now, so anyway, the March 12th date here, with the sale of the guitar and the 13 deaths, is 25 days or 600 hours or 36,000 minutes or 2,160,000 seconds before the astronauts will travel to the dark side of the moon on April 6th, which is the equivalent amount of time, 24 days, 600 hours, before May 1st, which is one of these dates that I'm talking about, that I'm predicting will be the big loss, or rather even possibly 13% loss in one day on May 1st. But anyway, May 1st will be exactly 188 months after the premiere of the movie Black Swan at the Venice Film Festival on the date 9/1 in the year 10, which ends at 9/11. Now, 188 because God uses this number frequently to hint at the 188th word in the Hebrew concordance, which is the word for woe, exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. Okay. Anyway, we have a pattern here, okay, which makes April 6th the midpoint. I could get into these numbers, but let's just move on. Black Swan, the movie, cost $13 million. Okay? So it's tied together here. 188 months later will be the Black Swan event in the stock market when the stock index will lose 13% in one day. By the way, another Black Swan event that occurred on the day that the Black Strat sold was the first, and God uses firsts for signs, the first statement from the new replacement leader of Iran. Haman in the Bible was the leader of Persia, was a leader of Persia. Second in command, if you will, and that's what's symbolized with this replacement also, Mojtaba. And anyway, it's a black swan because the Khomeini's death was an unexpected black swan, an unexpected shocking event. And these clerics are known for wearing all black garb. So that's why it's a black swan sign. And the Khomeini's death was a black swan event, the biggest this year, you might argue, so far anyway. And that's why his replacement is a further, another continuation pattern of the black swan death of the black garbed cleric Khomeini. All right. So, the 4.6 magnitude earthquake in San Francisco on the date 4/2 could hint at 4 days to 4 astronauts on the dark side of the moon on the date 4/6. Okay, well, the date 4/2 symbolizes 42, which is a period of time that symbolizes the period of the Antichrist in the Bible. And there's 2 Antichrists, Pope Francis, as in San Francisco, and the 44th president, as in 4 days to 4 astronauts. Okay. Also, Iran will be destroyed as described in Bible prophecy by the 4 winds from the 4 quarters of heaven in the book of Jeremiah. Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon was released on March 1st, 1973, exactly 450 months before the movie Black Swan was released. 45 is the 9th triangular number. Black Swan was released on the date 9/1, which hints at 9 times 1 equals 9. And the date of the release of Black Swan, 9/1 and 10, hints at 9/11 and Revelation 9/11. And that in turn, again, is 188 months to May 1st, May Day, Black Swan. Okay? It's May Day in Europe. They celebrate it as a leftist holiday. But it's also the code for distress at sea, May Day. All right, now, The Great Gig in the Sky is the 5th track on The Dark Side of the Moon, a 1973 album by English rock band Pink Floyd. The song features music by keyboard player Richard Wright and improvised wordless vocals by session singer Claire Torrey. It is one of only 3 Pink Floyd songs to feature lead vocals from an outside artist. The Great Gig in the Sky was released as a digital single on February 10th, 2023, to promote the Dark Side of the Moon 50th anniversary box set. Okay, so we have this date here related to the Dark Side of the Moon, but specifically also the famous track on the album The Great Gig in the Sky, which is about, well, so they say, because there's no lyrics. The afterlife. All right. The date of the release of the single the great gig in the sky on February 10th, 2023 is 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days before the sale of the Pink Floyd guitar on the date 3/12. That's amazing. See, this here is an example of what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. You cannot make this stuff up. This is from God. No one is creative enough to come up with all of this. I could not go back and find the great gig in the sky release date and give us a 3/12 to the date 3/12 in the sale of Pink Floyd's guitar. Now, obviously, there's probably more meaning to this 3/12 number, but I didn't figure it out when I was writing this, I don't think. Maybe I did. 3 times 12 is 36. And the date 3/12 is 36,000 minutes, like I said earlier, to when the astronauts will fly to the dark side of the moon. There you go, that's it. And then another 36,000 minutes from that to the predicted Black Swan event on May 1st. Okay, so there you go. That's why 3/12, 3 times 12. And that gets us back to the great gig in the sky. God brought into this connection and picture of signs the great gig in the sky through this time interval of 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days to the date 3/12. It's astounding, right? Okay, and obviously that's from God. If you don't know that, I don't know what to tell you. You are probably not listening to this video by now, if you're that stubborn. All right, okay, also the date the great gig in the sky was released here was the 13th super prime, semi-prime number of days. And God uses semi-prime numbers that are only divisible by 2 other prime numbers, okay, to the sale of the Pink Floyd guitar. So not only is it 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days, it's also the 13th super semi-prime number of days. And again, 13 is all about this pattern here regarding Iran and America. All right, and again, from the sale of the guitar, it is 50 days to the date 5/1 and the predicted 13% loss. The great gig in the sky is the 5th song from the album. Right, 50 days to the date 5/1, which is 5 times 1 equals 5, and it's the 5th song. It gets, connects with this 5th song release, right? All right, and also the destruction of Iran is described in the 5th chapter of the book of Zechariah. The destruction of Tehran with a nuclear missile, which is ultimately what's coming here. I'm jumping ahead. Also, the date 5/1 hints at that, because the word nuke is equal to 51 in simple English gematria. And whatever happens on May 1st, whether it's this 13% loss or something else, God is pointing to the date, and there will be some kind of black swan thing, maybe another sale of a black Strat guitar type of sign, or maybe an actual stock market loss or something. But this date is a step in the trail of signs that is leading to ultimately the date that Israel will launch a nuke missile at Tehran, because that's where all of this is headed. There is no way to remove the regime, and they will develop nuclear weapons, because unlike the ignorant agnostic atheist, this conflict cannot be explained without a spiritual perspective. And the truth is, the forces of Satan rule Iran. That's why Satan is referred to, for example, in Bible prophecy as the Prince of Persia. There's an evil spirit. Anyone with any sense should know that. Any sense of righteousness should and understanding, because if you are an agnostic atheist, there's no such thing as righteousness. There's no such thing as good and evil. Give me a break. I know you want to have your cake and eat it too, but that's because you're irrational. There's no good and bad. There's no right and wrong if there's no God. There has to be an arbiter as to what is good and bad. It's all subjective. The Nazis thought they were doing good. Who are you to tell them that they weren't doing good? And I know you would say that because you believe in nihilism, but then when you're confronted with reality, you don't know what to think because you don't think, basically. And why don't you think? Because you don't want there to be a righteous Christian God of the Bible that you're accountable to. It's all very simple, which is why you're going to hell. And I'm trying to help you here. But you need to help yourself because you have made the decision already to ignore this sort of thing. And what I was saying is that there's no way to remove this regime because this is all part of Satan and God's plan. The Strait of Hormuz was designed by God. Are you kidding? You think it's an accident, a fluke, just like the whole universe is a fluke? You think it's an accident that 20% of the world's oil lies underneath the evil religion of Islam and is choked by this one point that Iran can easily control? It's all designed by God for the end times, for this moment we are in, to bring the world, to suck in the world, to draw the nations of the world in and against Israel, to try to destroy it. But in the process, they are going to be destroyed. That's Bible prophecy. Tehran is about to be destroyed. But so are the other nations, all of them, as they come against Israel. Which is where Lord Jesus Christ will return and dwell on earth for the 1,000 years of peace on earth. But the evil is trying to prevent that from happening. That's just the plan. It's how it works. That's its job. And that's why the regime is obsessed with destroying Israel. It's because it's satanic. Wake up. I mean, really. I don't mean to be arrogant, but I'm really sincerely mean it. You're a fool if you can't see this. I mean, seriously. I mean, there's no excuse. Wake up. You are a fool. You are so blind. You are so blind. There is true evil. Wake up. It exists. It's not this universe isn't all materialism and an accident. That's stupid. It's a fairy tale for adults. Okay? And yeah, the Hormuz Strait is all part of the plan. Now, anyway, they will not ever stop attempting to get a nuclear weapon. It's part of God's way to draw in the world here through the attempt to remove the ability for them to have a nuclear weapon. But the only way to remove the regime is to destroy Tehran. And that's ultimately what's going to happen. And the world is not going to be happy about that because they're wicked. The world is evil. They have their moral compass is skewed. They do not understand right and wrong. They just understand hate. For Israel, it's all spiritual. Jews have a right to exist, and they have a right to exist in the Holy Land. It is their land, and God has the last word on whose land it is. The Jews are in the process for now a long time of being restored to this land. And one big piece of the puzzle that is yet to be placed is the Jews being chased out of America by the blind-hating left. And that is what's coming. And to get there, Tehran needs to be destroyed with a nuclear missile. You see the big picture here? In other words, the hatred for Israel is only going to increase exponentially. But they do need to destroy Tehran. It's necessary for their survival. It's either them It's either Tehran or them. And it's not unrighteous to destroy them if they want to destroy you. It's not. Okay, and they have the right to destroy Tehran. The thing is that there's millions of people that live there that don't agree with the regime. That's all also part of the plan. That's why it's so controversial. It needs to be controversial. It needs to be controversial. I mean, that would have been done already had it not been for the... See, it's beautiful in a way. The protesters there and the anti-regime people are in the news all the time to make it more clear that it's a controversy, to make it more of an issue, to make it not so easy to know what's right and wrong, to confuse the confused-minded liberal leftists that don't think clearly, right? It serves to further the confusion. What's also confusing for this mindset is that they think that this life is all there is. But if this life isn't all there is, it doesn't matter. But the truth is, nothing matters. Nothing at all, zero. Nothing, absolutely nothing has any meaning in life if there's no eternity. You just haven't thought about it for 1 minute, but just think about it for 1 minute. Okay? You know it's true. And you get up every morning with the created meaning that you create for yourself in order to get up out of bed every day. But you know there's no meaning. And it's just in your imagination that you created the meaning that makes you continue living. But if there's no eternity, you know nothing matters. You will not carry any memories with you after you die if there's no eternity. No one will remember you after at least one generation. As if that would bring any meaning anyway. Okay? And we could extrapolate this all the way to the fact that in 900 million years, the sun will be too hot for life to exist on Earth. And that's not very long in geological terms or cosmological time. Okay, so nothing matters. There's no meaning unless there's an eternity. So, okay, these people in Iran, the anti-regime people in Iran, okay, their lives were shortened, but that's God. That's on God, you know. But when you think about it in terms from God's perspective, getting a full quote-unquote life is not the point of life. If it were, it'd be a complete tragedy, right? Because there's many people that don't get a good life and have a really short one. No, the point is not, like the agnostic atheist thinks, to get the most out of life and then you die. That's stupid. Think about it. It's retarded. It's ridiculous because you know there's no meaning. Okay, you have these experiences, but even 1 year after you've had the experience, you forget about it. Your memory fades, but then you die, and then you have zero memory. So what's the point of having these great experiences like traveling the world and stuff like that? There's no meaning to it, and you know it. You just do these things so that you can continue to wake up in the morning and not be depressed and have a goal, etc. Something to look forward to. But you know there's an anxiety deep in you. There's an uneasiness. You know that that's something you're looking forward to is ephemeral. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really exist. You're just making it up. If there's no eternity, nothing matters, including the lives that will be lost, quote unquote, innocent, but they're not innocent. Everyone is a sinner. And these people that didn't get a full opportunity to hear the gospel will receive that opportunity in the middle place, in the place where Jesus will visit them after they have died and then give them another opportunity. Assuming they didn't get a full opportunity in their life, which would likely be the case for many people living in Tehran. Not the case with many people living in the West that are over the age of 40. Arguably, those under the age of 40 or 30 have had maybe as much as exposure to the gospel as someone in Tehran these days in the West. That's how bad the West has become. But that's another subject. And to those Christians that think that there's two camps, eternal torture forever and eternal life, you're not correct. It's not the Bible. There's three. There's the middle people, the vast majority of people, those that lived before Christ, for example. They will have a second opportunity. And no, people will not be tortured forever in hell. There's a second death that's described in the Bible. And the opponents to that view that are atheists are correct. God would not be a good God if that were the case and people were to be tortured forever, especially if they were mediocre in their life, not like truly wicked. Right? Come on. You really think that people are going to be tortured forever? No, they're not. And the Bible doesn't say that either. It says the opposite. But there's three camps, and there you go. So let's continue. I've explained now. I guess I went off a little bit to try to explain this thing that's about to happen and how God could allow this. Well, it's all part of the plan, and you don't have the mind of God, especially if you've never even believed in a God. You have no idea. I tried to give you a little bit of a taste of what it's like to think from a different perspective. But the truth is, like I just said, there's no meaning to life, and your perspective on the unfortunate loss of the people living in Tehran is not correct. Their lives don't matter. None of our lives matter unless there's an eternity. Right? You're going to die, and not very long from now, no matter how old you are. And then nothing you did will matter. Zero. So there's no point, okay? Okay, so what I was saying here is we have the date 5-1 connects actually to the predicted date of the nuclear missile that will strike Tehran on August 26th, 2026. And I believe that connection is 32% of a year, and 32 is the equivalent to the word bomb in simple English gematria. Now, the release of the Pink Floyd Great Gig in the Sky release for the 50th anniversary box, The Dark Side of the Moon, 3 years, 1 month, 2 days to the date 312, which since it's 3 times 12 equals 36. And again, 312 is 36,000 minutes to the astronauts on the dark side of the moon, which is in turn 36,000 minutes to May 1st. And the predicted Black Swan, or Pink Floyd, if you will, event. Okay, now the release of the 5th song from the Dark Side of the Moon for the 50th anniversary is 3 years, 1 month, 2 days to the date 312. And that date is in turn 5 times 5 days to April 6th, which is in turn 5 times 5 days to 5-1, which is at 5 times 1 equals 5. And again, the destruction of Tehran is described with the nuclear missile in Zechariah chapter 5. The woman here, Claire Torrey, who sang the vocals for The Dark Side of the Moon, is an English singer and songwriter best known for performing in Pink Floyd's song The Great Gig in the Sky from their 8th studio album, The Dark Side of the Moon. In 2012, readers of Rolling Stone ranked it the second best vocal performance in rock history. So she's quite famous for this, okay? It's a big deal. Rolling Stone, second best vocal performance in rock history. This isn't obscure, but anyway, why does Wikipedia mention her birth date? Why is it the first thing mentioned? So what? I mean, the blurb about Claire Torrey begins with her birth date. Well, she was born the day that the UN first recognized Israel as a state with the UN partition plan for Palestine. It was a very important date in history, especially God's history, November 29th, 1947. This woman was born on that date. And like I'm saying, this is all about Israel. Now, the name of the main character in Black Swan is Nina. Black Swan was released 450 months after Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. As I said earlier, 45 is the 9th triangular number, but this has confirmed the relevance of this with the name Nina, which hints at the number 9. The Dark Side of the Moon album has a song, Money. Not only that, but it's a hit. It was actually God uses firsts for signs. It was the first Pink Floyd hit in the US. The Great Gig in the Sky is supposed to represent the moment before death, a reflection of all the human emotions. All right, this is an important breakthrough. This is what came to me. Finally put a lot of things together. The Latin classifications for lunar planes are Oceanus, Mare, and Lacus, which are Latin for ocean, sea, and lake, and also Palus, which means marsh. Oh, and Sinus, which means bay. So, Black Swan is about a ballet company's performance of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. That's the movie Black Swan. It's about. The plot of the movie Black Swan is about a ballet performance of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. This is why it connects to Pink Floyd and The Dark Side of the Moon. If you were wondering a minute ago, well, The Dark Side of the Moon is black. We had a black swan, right? But the movie is about a swan. The performance of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, which ties to the moon because the surfaces of the moon are given these names that are bodies of water. Okay? This is a huge insight into just so many different things in God's science from, these last many years. So for example, Trump is all about the moon. Trump is a moon sign, in a way, if you will. His call to return to the moon, for example, was symbolic of the return for Christ, because Trump is God's trumpet and the moon symbolizes Christ. It is a giant rock, and in the Bible, a rock symbolizes Jesus. The sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. And that's why watching for the moon in the Bible is important, as it symbolizes the watching for the timing of the Lord's return, which includes moon signs. Anyway, Trump was born on the day of a prophetic blood moon lunar eclipse, exactly 23 months before Israel was reborn. But get this. This is why Trump lives and is associated with his Mar-a-Lago state. That's right. This is, Spanish, but Spanish is very close to Latin because mar means sea. Mare in Latin. Mar in Spanish. Lago means lake. right? The reason Mar-a-Lago is it's where the lake meets the sea. Mar-a-Lago. But what we didn't realize until now is this was all a moon reference. No wonder Trump lives at Mar-a-Lago. It's a moon reference. It's amazing. Now, also, the Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers. It's an odd name for a basketball team, right? But now we know why there's so many prophetic Los Angeles Lakers signs. The Lakers hints at the lakes on the moon. If you need proof of this, there's this. The Lakers have won 17 championships, which hints at the last time that an American stepped off of the moon in Apollo 17, which is symbolic of America's departure from Christ. America's departure from Christ, symbolized by America's last time on the moon with Apollo 17, is the reason why the two space shuttle disasters which replaced the Apollo missions were almost exactly 17 years apart. Just a couple days off on the calendar, and they are commemorated on the same date every year. The last departure of an American from the moon in Apollo 17 and the two space shuttle disasters that were 17 years apart is also why the two planes struck the two towers on 9/11 17 minutes apart. Yes, that's correct. 9/11 was pointing to the last time that an American stepped off of the moon, which is symbolic of America's departure from Christ, which is what 9/11 was, a warning sign to America that it has departed from Christ. Incidentally, the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart were planes from Boston to Los Angeles. Until 2024, the two teams with the most championship wins were Boston and Los Angeles. Each of them had 17 championships. That's two 17s, as in the two space shuttle disasters 17 years apart, and the shuttle missions replacing the Apollo missions, which ended with Apollo 17. In 2024, Boston won its 18th championship, which was another prophetic sign. Long story, another story. And 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, the number of the Antichrist. Long story. It had to do with Biden, because he was about to be taken out of the running. He stepped down shortly after Boston won. Biden's nickname by the Secret Service was Celtic. It was the Boston Celtics. And Biden's, of course, symbolic of the Antichrist, the Democrat president, because the Antichrist was and will be again the president, a Democrat president. The 44th president will be the 50th president after Michelle Obama becomes the 49th president for a brief period before she steps down and makes her vice president, Barack, the president in 2029. Speaking of all of the 9/11 here, 29 is 9 plus 10 plus 10. There were 44 deaths on Flight 93. Iran is made up of 93 million people. Its destruction is described in Bible prophecy as coming from the four winds from the four corners of heaven. Four quarters of heaven. Now, the key aspects of the Tory surname. Okay, so Tory, the singer here in the Dark Side of the Moon, Great Gig in the Sky. So the geographical origin most commonly found in Scotland, blah, 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 blah. Okay, her name means high rock, a peak or tower. the moon is a high rock. From our perspective on Earth, it's high in the sky. It's a high rock. That's Tori's name. And she sang about this on the dark side of the moon, or she sang on the dark side of the moon. Now, George Floyd died in Minneapolis. The Los Angeles Lakers formerly played in Minneapolis, which is how they got the name, because Minneapolis is the land of the 1,000 lakes. That's where the origin of the name Lakers comes from. It has nothing to do with Los Angeles. It's because the Lakers franchise was moved from Minneapolis to Los Angeles. But we have this pattern here of the Floyd, right? George Floyd, right? Okay, no. Renee Good and Preddy were also in Minneapolis. It's all connected, but I'm not clear at this time how it connects. But anyway, so Lakers, Minneapolis. Okay, Kamala Harris was the first presidential candidate running for the White House, or at the time she was the vice presidential candidate, to visit an abortion clinic while running for office. That's right, and it was in Minneapolis. The last time that an American stepped off of the moon was exactly 144 weeks after the first state legalized abortions. 144 is a very prophetic number from the book of Revelation about the end times. Okay, now Harris, as we mentioned or explained in another video, is what's hinted at with Artemis. She, as the vice president, visited the Kennedy Space Center. By the way, Kennedy died while he was traveling in a vehicle, and Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash in August of 2028, as when she will be running for president again. Or actually, she'll be running for vice president again. That's another subject, okay. But Artemis is named after the goddess, Artemis, who is the goddess of childbirth. Kamala Harris is the goddess of abortions. She's the first woman vice president. Artemis is all about sending the first woman to the moon. Okay? And, all right. So that's why Artemis went to the moon. Minneapolis, the land of lakes, lakes on the moon. Right? See how it's all amazing and all tied together? Springsteen and Obama recorded their Renegades, which, by the way, is what Renee Good hints at, because the nickname for the Antichrist when he was president by the Secret Service was Renegade. Anyway, Springsteen and Obama was Renegade, recorded their Renegades podcast on the day Perseverance was launched. And of course, Springsteen has been in the news for his political activist song about Minneapolis, the land of the lakes, as in the lakes on the moon. You know, spring is a body of water. Interesting. Spring is a body of water. And all of the surfaces on the moon are named after bodies of water. Wow. That just came to me. And I think it's legitimate. I think that's correct. This is the reason for the name Springsteen. Finally. Yeah, because the podcast with his Antichrist partner, named Renegades, was recorded on the day that the Perseverance was launched. Okay, this is all about, space and the moon, right? Spring is a body of water. Springs are bodies of water. Yep. Lakers, King James record was the day before Artemis's launch for the moon. Okay, more lakes on the moon. That was important, by the way, and that's explained in another video. His record was for the most wins, playing in the most wins games. Most games won at 1,229. Well, Jimmy Carter died on the date 12/29. That's what led me to realize that Carter hints at crater on the moon. And there's lots more to that, which I'm not going to get into right here because it's in another video, or at least in another email until I make that video. But so yeah. And anyway, that record that hinted at Jimmy Carter, crater on the moon, was made by the Lakers, craters on the moon. All right, the day before Artemis launched for the moon. Probably less than 24 hours. Now, Alan Parsons was involved in the Dark Side of the Moon production, and he was the one who recruited Claire Torrey, the singer, for that one song. Claire means clear or bright. Claire Torrey gives us clear, bright, high rock, moon. Well, they were launched on the full moon, the pink moon, which is a clear, bright, high rock, right? That's her name again, right? Torrey means high rock, right? And she was born on the date that Israel was recognized at the UN. And on that day, I looked it up, the moon was 98% illuminated. So on the day of her birth and the day of this event in Israel history, it was basically a full moon. Claire Torrey could have been born within 24 hours of the full moon. The moon was in Taurus, as in Torrey. Amazing. Now, according to E.W. Bullinger, Taurus is symbolic of the coming judge in ancient astronomy that the Jews followed, the ancient Jews. Now, the date of the release of the Great Gig in the Sky with Claire Torrey, which means bright, clear, high rock moon, the fifth song from the Dark Side of the Moon for the 50th anniversary was 3 years, 1 month, 2 days to the date 3/12, and that gave us the 5 times 5 days, and then another 5 times 5 days to the first day of the 5th month. Okay, I already did all that. Okay, so anyway, 5/1 is the day of the full moon, the flower moon. So we've got a connection to the next moon, the next full moon, the flower moon. And anyway, okay, so Gilmore brought back the black strat. Sorry, Gilmore bought the black strat from Manny's Music in Manhattan. This gives us MM, which is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and that hints at 13% loss in Manhattan in the Black Swan event in the stock market, which is symbolized by the black strat, which is about money, and the black strat was used in making the song Money. The black strat sold for $14.6 million. It was a record, and God uses records for signs. 146 is the 50th semi-prime number. The black strat sold for the 50th semi-prime number of dollars, $1 million, 50 days before the 5-1 Black Swan event date. Black Strat, 50, 50, and also don't forget the 50th anniversary box set for Great Gig in the Sky, the 5th song on the album. All right, the 14.55 million emphasizes the number 5 and the 5th song, The Great Gig in the Sky. However, this also gives us 14.6 and the 50th semi-prime to confirm adding the 50 days. So back to what I was saying at the beginning of this video, I'm explaining the reasons for how May 1st is known. If you think this is all a fluke, if this happens on May 1st, and that the reasons that I'm giving here are just made up, some kind of convoluted thing, well, the truth is Satan is blinding your mind at the moment. Your mind is literally being blinded right now, which is actually a literal, real thing. Your mind, Satan blinds the minds of these people. Now, also 14.55 gives us 5 times 5 days from the auction of the guitar used during the recording of The Dark Side of the Moon to the astronauts on the dark side of the moon. Okay. All right, so this link here is for a documentary on the history of this Black Strat guitar. Okay. At the same, which is where I learned that the guitar was purchased at Manny's Music in Manhattan. All right. Now, at the same auction of the sale of the guitar, a custom-built guitar known as Tiger, owned by the Grateful Dead's Jerry Garcia, sold for $11.6 million. This was around the time that Tiger Woods crashed, and it's relevant, but I'm not going to explain it anymore. At the same auction, the highest ever amount paid for a Beatles memorabilia went for Lennon's piano for $3.2 million. Handwritten lyrics to Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin' sold. Okay, that's symbolic of 3.2 hints at bomb and Obama. Obama is also equal to 32 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Now, Dylan's The Times Are A-Changin', handwritten lyrics, that's also, of course, relevant because this is the end times. The times are a-changin'. That's God saying right now, the times are a-changin'. In fact, if you want to get prophetic from the Bible, it's the times of the Gentiles changing over, ending, transitioning into the times of the Messiah and his rule from the center of the world, Israel. A trumpet belonging to jazz legend Miles Davis. Okay, trumpets, that's God trumpeting his messages and signs and the timing and things like that. And also, of course, trump, God's trumpet. Sylvester Stallone's handwritten script notebook for Rocky, which hints at the moon. And it sold for $508,000, and that hints at Iran, in which 5 out of 8 helicopters made it to the first rendezvous point, Desert One, in Operation Eagle Claw, something that God points to repeatedly. Because of this also, as I'll explain. A weigh-in fight robe used by American boxer Muhammad Ali, which sold for $444,000. Because of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, which coincided with the final 444 days of Jimmy Carter Crater's presidency. And Carter, during the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, attempted to rescue the 4 times 4th prime number of hostages in Operation Eagle Claw, which sent 4+4 helicopters, only 4 of which returned because one of them collided with the refueling plane and in so doing killed 4+4 military personnel and injured 4 more. In this whole event in the Iranian desert, a civilian Iranian bus drove by, which had to be taken captive briefly, and in which were 44 civilians. According to Christie's website, the 44 items in the collection. Okay, so the reason for 44 in this pattern of 4s here is Iran, but it also is from the Bible, because the Bible describes in prophecy the destruction of Iran by the 4 winds from the 4 quarters of heaven. And by the way, it was a wind event that took out the helicopters. They encountered a sandstorm. Also, the Antichrist is the 44th president. And as I explained earlier, Iran is ruled by Satan, the prince of Persia. And the Antichrist is Satan's representative, the 44th president. According to Christie's website, the 44 items in the collection made a total of 84 million. Obama, the 44th president, was born on the date 8/4, and the name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria. The auction was a collection from Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, who reportedly passed away on May 21st, 2025. Now, David Gilmour was born on 3/6 in the year 46. 36 years exactly before the date 3/6 in the year 09, when the stock market bottomed in the S&P 500, bottom tick was 666, which since at 3/6s, which is why it occurred in the date 3/6, and was exactly 63 years after David Gilmour was born. Yeah. And again, the sale of his guitar is 36,000 minutes to the astronauts on the black side of the moon, which is again, in turn, 36,000 minutes to May 1st in the predicted crash Black Swan event. Now, Alan Parsons' project, Alan Parsons was again the engineer on the album, Dark Side of the Moon, but he produced Eye in the Sky. One of the songs on the Dark Side of the Moon was The Great Gig in the Sky. The Great Gig in the Sky is 4 minutes and 44 seconds long. See how all the signs all overlap? You God is the master artist and creative genius. And yeah. It all, and by the way, up where they landed in Operation Eagle Claw, the location was chosen because it was moon-like. But when they arrived, they unexpectedly found that the surface was covered ankle deep in dust because of a storm. But it wasn't supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be moon-like. This is why all these moon signs. Because of Operation Eagle Claw in Iran. Yes, it all goes back to that. Yes, the astronauts were launched to the moon to point to the moon landing, moon-like surface in Operation Eagle Claw in the attempt to rescue the hostages, which is all symbolic of the coming invasion of Iran, which is predicted to occur on April 13th or April 12th. I didn't mention that at the beginning of the video. But the invasion in Operation Eagle Claw to try to rescue the hostages in Tehran is symbolic of the coming invasion of Iran, whether it be in the Hormuz Strait or whatever, that will ultimately lead to Tehran with a nuke. Okay, now the B side of A Great Gig in the Sky was Any Color You Like. No. The B side of Pink Floyd's Money. Sorry. Okay, I skipped this line here. Pink Floyd's Money was their first hit in the US, and it reached number 13. Again, number 13, the number 13 symbolizes Iran. But it was number 13 on what? The Billboard 100. 13% is 13 out of 100. That's what we're predicting here on either April 13th or May 1st. A 13% drop of money in the stock market. That's why the song reached, as its first hit in the US, number 13 out of 100. 13%. This is amazing, right? If you think I made all this up, you're crazy. Obviously, this is from God. The prediction will prove it. The B side of the release single Money by Pink Floyd was Any Color You Like, as in Black Swan, Pink Floyd, Pink Moon, White Rabbit, Purple Banana. Amazing. The intuition that Manny's music is prophetic is correct. The band famously had all of their gear stolen while on tour in the US, and Gilmour stopped at Manny's Music in Manhattan on the way home to the UK. So the history of this guitar is actually a part of a story that's bad, wicked, evil, right? All of their gear was stolen. It's also symbolic of a new beginning too. As in a person's new beginning when they come to Christ. We expected a black swan sign on March 13th. Perhaps the black Strat was sold after sunset Israel time, because days in Israel begin at sunset. Okay. Now the BBC article says that the total of the auction was 84 million, 44 items, which is clearly the 44th president born on the date 8/4. Now, the Christie's, okay, the name of the auction company, also hints at Antichrist. Christie's Antichrist. And they auctioned 44 items because the Antichrist is the 44th president for $84 million. Now, and it was also 84.0 million. And this auction was held on the date 3/12, which gives us 3 times 12 and 36, which is equal to 666, because it hints at 3 sixes, but also it is 6 times 6, and also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number, in a triangle of numbers, the last number is, in the 36th row, is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Now, 50 days after the auction will be May 1st and May Day. A predicted 13% loss hints at Revelation chapter 13, in which the Antichrists are described as in Christie's auction house. Antichrists. Christie's Antichrists. One of the items was Ringo Starr's pinky ring, as in the ring around the pink moon made by the astronauts. Amazing. One of the items is a poster for the concert on February 3rd, 1959, involving the musicians that died in the plane crash on that date, for which the song The Day the Music Died commemorated. This is all relevant because the Antichrist will return to the White House through a plane crash. The predicted plane crash of Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, the running mates in the election in 2028, and they'll be replaced in an emergency with Michelle and Barack Obama. That's why God is pointing to this plane crash here. Okay? The day of the auction was a prophetic plane crash in Iraq. So actually the first item, lot 1 out of the 44, was the poster for the plane crash. Okay. Also, by the way, the date 2-3 hints at 23. And God pairs 23 and 44. There were 44 items in the auction. Beginning with the first one that hints at the date 2-3, because the pairings of 23 and 44, God does this to confirm the signs and connections. Because the basketball president wore number 23, the 44th president. The day of the auction was the prophetic plane crash in Iraq. By the way, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which you would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. And I know this, and know these are the numbers, because I've been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 8 years. The day of the prophetic auction was the prophetic plane crash in Iraq, which, by the way, was a plane crash that pointed to Operation Eagle Claw, because it was a helicopter. No, the plane crash involved a refueling plane in western Iraq, and the helicopter crash with the refueling plane in Operation Eagle Claw occurred in western Iran. Hence, the Day the Music Died plane crash concert poster. In the auction was Lennon's Rose Rickenbacker guitar, and rose is a word for pink. A spiritual letter by Steve Jobs dated his 19th birthday, sold for $444,000. His 19th birthday gives us the 4 plus 4th prime number. That's crazy. If this is correct, it's crazy. But Muhammad Ali's robe sold for $444,500, and so did Steve Jobs' letter. And I just copy-pasted these lines from the auction site. So this must be correct. That's pretty crazy. And I explained earlier the reason for the pattern of 444. Also, the 444th word in the Greek concordance for the Bible is the word man, which is Antichrist. Because man was created on the 6th day, which is why the Antichrist's number is 666. But the second of the two Antichrists is the 44th president, the man. The Day the Music Died poster was lot 1 of the auction. The auction broke 28 records. The plane crash of Kamala Harris is predicted to be in the year 28. On the date 8-2, which is outside the US as 2-8. 3 guitars in the auction broke the prior record for the most for a sale of a guitar. 3 guitars broke that record in this auction. The record-setting guitar was the Black Strat that was sold for $14 million. So 3 record guitars and the record one selling for $14 million hints at 3.14, which is equal to pi. Capital P-I-E, if you flip the E and the P, gives us 413. And hints at the date 413. The other date besides May 1st that is predicted to be a day for the stock market crash, and also the invasion of Iran, or possibly on the 12th actually, And but the markets will crash on the Monday after that. The words "slice of my pie" are in the song "Money" by Pink Floyd on the Dark Side of the Moon album. 3 guitars, 14 million. The guitar used in the album. When this lyric was sung, "Slice of my pie." 3 guitars, 14 million, 3.14 pi, the number pi. The reason for the owner of the Indianapolis Colts is the Lot 1 poster of "The Day the Music Died" poster. The vice president of Indian descent, as in Indianapolis, will die in a plane crash. And again, the auction was on the day of a prophetic plane crash, which gave us a total of 13 deaths, which incited wrong. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.